right, hello everyone. It is 4 o'clock, so we're gonna go ahead and get started with the webinar. Hopefully you guys can all see and hear me okay. My name is Abby Keller. I'm the assistant curator here at the International Wolf Center. I'm joined by Giselle and Lexi. Giselle, our curator, and Lexi, our wolf care specialist. And welcome to Rieka's birthday webinar. Just for a little bit of a reminder, if you have any questions at all during the webinar, please feel free to put them in the Q&A tab of Zoom. So if you kind of hover down on your screen, you can kind of find that Q&A tab and put your questions there. There we go. So here's a little bit of kind of an agenda for today. We're going to start out with myself. I'm going to talk a little bit about Rieka, kind of her journey from being a neonate to a packmate to a dominant female within our exhibit pack. Then we will do a quick exhibit pack update with Giselle, just kind of talking about some of the updates that's going on within the pack, as well as in the wolf care department. We're going to have a little special birthday cake for Rieka, which is made up of a couple of different meats, mostly ham and some brats, topped with a beaver tail, which is Rieka's favorite. So we'll be able to kind of watch that through our live cameras. And while we're doing that, we will also have time for a live Q&A. So we'll answer some of your guys' questions as they come in. So again, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in that Q&A tab. All right, so I'll go ahead and get started. We adopted Rieka when she was very, very young as a neonate. She was born at the Wildlife Science Center here in Minnesota. There you can see her at 11 days old in that video. We do hand raise all of our pups. We get them at that neonate stage, like I mentioned, so that we can get them used to life in captivity, specifically life here at the International Wolf Center. There we have Rieka being introduced to Grayson and Axel, the two males in the exhibit pack at the time. We do this through the fence first, just to kind of get them used to the sights, the sounds, the smells of that new pup. And then we also have kind of an outdoor space for the pup to wander around and explore during the day. They're still very kind of fragile at that stage. They're kind of not really ready to live outdoors full time. So they do live kind of in our wolf care center, especially at night, to kind of stay out of the heat of the day, or if it's raining, just to kind of stay dry. And then, of course, the bugs as well, trying to keep them away from those pesky mosquitoes and flies. Luckily for Rieka summer, there was not a lot of bugs. It was pretty dry, but we did have a lot of wasps, so a lot of kind of more stinging insects. But a fun fact about her, she used to eat meat that was covered in wasps and get stung in her mouth and not care one bit. So that kind of gives you an idea of her personality, kind of that feisty spirit. In this video, you can see some people walking out. This is what we call our pup program. So we would have people kind of come outside to see what she's up to, view her through the fence, and then we also have kind of an educational talk and have some time for people to ask questions about her, about wolves in general. And then that's kind of a good way for us to be able to talk about the development of wolf pups and kind of our transition process of bringing a new individual into the exhibit pack. It's also a great way to kind of start introducing that newer individual next to the fence where the adult wolves can start to kind of mentally accept her into the pack. So Rieka was a singleton. She did not have any pack mates, any litter mates. She was born the only one in her litter, no brothers or sisters. So we had a lot of different things to kind of keep her occupied. There she has a deer hide. But she really kind of focused mostly on humans for her source of comfort and entertainment and care. But we did bring in several dogs. Here's one of them. This is Max. He was one of the pup nannies. And you can see just kind of how gentle he's being with her. This was a great way to get her used to kind of that canine communication. Obviously, we can do our best to provide her as much comfort and care as possible, but you know, we cannot speak that same language, that canid language. While dog and wolf behavior can be really similar and have a lot of similarities, there's also a lot of differences too. So it's not a perfect fit, but it is a great way to get her to kind of experience life with a larger canid similar to herself. When she was introduced into the exhibit pack, she was actually the smallest individual that we've ever introduced. She was only 23 pounds, and she was a little intimidated by the larger males, Axel and Grayson. There you can see her kind of jumping back a little. She has a bit of a tucked tail. A windy day like that doesn't help either. Wolves usually don't appreciate the wind very much. She does seek a little bit of confidence from going up on that rock there. But it didn't take too long for her to kind of start to investigate the two boys with a little bit more curiosity and a little less kind of intimidation. So there you see her kind of approaching Grayson very slowly. He's actually laying next to, I think it was a beaver foot that she grabs and kind of carries off. But within no time, she started engaging with the other males, kind of how you would expect to see wolf pups engaging with other adult wolves. So lots of kind of social behaviors there. You see Grayson do some flea bites to her face, a little bit of a social grooming. She rolls on her back kind of submissively, but she's also kind of a little awkward in her interactions. I don't really know if it's quite apt to say that it's like social awkwardness, but I would imagine that there's a little bit of a disconnect not having siblings to kind of wrestle with and kind of engage with and learn those behaviors with each other. It's kind of probably difficult for her to say or to tell, what's appropriate and what's not appropriate at that age. So there you can see her kind of nipping at his tail a little bit. And Grayson is so kind of mild-mannered that he just kind of lets it happen. Kind of just walks away, tucks his tail, and kind of just leaves the situation. Whereas Axel, he's a little bit more reactive. He would have been a little bit more willing to kind of put her in her place for something like that, which is why we started to see her kind of gravitate a little bit more towards Grayson, it seemed. There you can see her kind of looking like that classic example of a gray wolf. Lots of grays and browns and blacks in that coat. You can notice it's also kind of a little puffier. That's that fall kind of secondary coat coming in, that undercoat growing to kind of keep them warm in the winter time. By winter, we usually see kind of more energy. You kind of get those colder temp days, and so you get a lot more activity within the pack. She was starting to show a lot of kind of this interest in engaging with her pack mates. You can see her very kind of bouncy and social, wanting to engage, but maybe not quite knowing how. They definitely had positive moments, but she also seemed a little bit unsure sometimes, and maybe taking some of her frustration out on Grayson's tail there. Grayson kind of shooing her off with a little bit of a lip curl, and then she turns over to Axel to get a little bit of social attention too. So, that's kind of how we started to see that little bit of a tail grab trend coming with her. Although we do see that with other wolves as well, so it's not just Rieka. But we did notice her and Grayson continue to have kind of this closer bond, a lot more kind of quiet moments between the two of them. Usually when we see resting in proximity of each other or resting next to each other, it's kind of an indication of a stronger social bond or stronger social alliance within the pack. So there you can see them almost touching, not quite yet, but we did decide to introduce Kaz and Blackstone, adopt two more pups the year after. So she's only a year old in this clip here, but she's already regurgitating for them. She's salivating with excess hormones. Very excited to greet pups and introduce and bring them into the pack. So Rieka was actually the first wolf that we introduced Kaz and Blackstone to, and it was a pretty calm interaction between them for the most part. Kaz and Blackstone were very excited, kind of jumping all over her, a little bit intimidating for her. She didn't seem to know what to do with that. But she did eventually learn to kind of dominate, not really. She mostly just kind of let them crawl on top of her, which you'll see in a second, the consequences of that. But it became pretty obvious early on that these three were going to be quite the trio within the exhibit pack. we started to see kind of that more juvenile side come out, kind of that social, playful nature that we kind of typically associate with juveniles. Whereas Axel and Grayson were, more mature adults at that stage. They were 7 years old in this video, so they were more concerned of keeping the pack kind of in line and calm, whereas Rieka was more interested in, chasing each other around and kind of engaging in these social moments. Um, this is one of the big reasons that we wanted to bring in Kaz and Blackstone was because, Rieka didn't really get to have that as a pup. She didn't have those litter mates to wrestle around with or to kind of engage in this more juvenile manner. So we really wanted to kind of bring in pups that would let her have that opportunity to kind of engage with them in a not so immature way. But as I mentioned, sometimes that does come with consequences. When you're seen as just a playmate, a lot of times, you don't really get the status in the pack that maybe a dominant female would normally get. So here you can see Kaz and Blackstone kind of ganging up on her, and then Axel and Grayson kind of joining in as well. Um, and that's pretty common. They're just kind of focused on her. She's pretty uncomfortable. You can see her tail tucked, but she's still on her all 4 feet. She's able to kind of get away from them. Um, but they then seem to kind of take advantage of her lax nature around them. Especially Blackstone. He likes to do a lot of standovers and a lot of kind of squashing behaviors where you kind of just sit on top of another wolf. Here is Blackstone doing one of those kind of signature standovers. Rieka not too happy about that. You can see her growling and kind of trying to kick him off. But she does get up. She's kind of focused on him with that direct stare, high T2 tail, kind of gives him a little bit of a correction. So she is able to kind of put them in their place sometimes. Sometimes a little less subtly. She'll just walk over and kind of sit on top of them. But usually it's a little bit more direct when she wants to be. We've also seen an increase of marking behavior, so raised leg urinations, flex leg urinations, things of that nature, which also kind of point towards a more mature, more confident individual. This video was just from a couple days ago, 2 days ago, and it is Rieka doing some guarding behavior towards Kaz. So it's not just Blackstone that she's willing to kind of intervene with, but she will also kind of put Kaz in his place as well. Now, granted, this is a guarding. There was a piece of deer hide that she was kind of focused on, so that can have kind of a different meaning than if it was just kind of dominance for, status. There's kind of a different kind of meaning between there, but still an interesting clip to include. We do see a lot of kind of quiet moments between Rieka and Kaz, a little bit more of a stronger social bond between those two compared to her and Blackstone, it seems. But we also see that she's a lot more defensive of him. So whenever Grayson kind of corrects Kaz or kind of, makes sure that he's staying that submissive individual, Rieka usually comes around and will either grab at his rear or will just kind of focus on him a little bit more. And whether or not that's, in response to defending Kaz or if it's just a response to the excitement of the situation, kind of difficult to say. The only thing I can say is that it seems to happen more often when it's Kaz on his back. Usually she doesn't have the same reaction when it's Blackstone. That being said, this past couple of months in particular, we have been noting a lot of kind of increased confidence from Grayson. And that seems to kind of translate to some more social interactions between himself and Rieka, a lot more face-to-face interactions, which seem to kind of point towards a little bit more of a strengthening bond between those two. We also saw this earlier this month of her and him just kind of resting right next to each other, touching, kind of, again, that resting in proximity that typically points to a stronger social relationship. We always get that question, are they bonded? Will they ever bond? Who's she gonna pick? It's really hard to say, she is the dominant female, kind of by default, just because she's the only female, but that allows her kind of the opportunity to engage with each pack member and kind of make that choice, depending on the rest of the pack dynamics that are going on. It does seem like Grayson's kind of falling into that dominant male leadership role. Whether or not she's going to agree with that and accept that, only time will tell. But it seems like we're seeing a little bit more calmer interactions between those two, a little bit more social moments between them. So, that's kind of the end of my part. I'll leave with this last little clip of the pack howling together. Make sure you kind of try to pay attention for Rika's howl. She kind of has those lower tones in her howl. I'll try to turn the sound up a little so you can hear it okay.
Thank you so much, Abby, for that wonderful presentation and a great summary of Freika's life. For those of us that weren't really here, um, I think Lexi has done a pretty good job at answering questions here, but there's one that I think it kind of has been answered, and it was about who are Rika's parents. If you know their names. I know that Rieka came from the Wildlife Science Center, and we have knowledge of their lineage, but I don't know if you remember the name of the parents.
Yeah, good question. I don't remember the name of them off the top of my head. It's been a few years, but I do know that both of her parents were um, from wild litters that were found out in British Columbia, Canada. Um, and these were litters that did not have any parents, and so they needed, homes. Otherwise, they were just going to be left out in the wild. So, the wonderful folks at Wildlife Science Center, accepted them to their facility and raised them. So she is only one generation away from wild born, which I think is super interesting. A lot of times, captive situations, you typically see individuals that are born in captivity. Which Rika was born in captivity, but the fact that her parents were wild is pretty neat, I think. But yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. It seems like another one of our followers knows the name. I'm guessing they're connected to Wildlife Science Center. Said that the name of the parents were Iris and Chief, but that Chief has passed away. So that's that's one thing I know now.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I don't think her dad was Chief. I think Chief passed away before she was born. He passed away a couple years ago, as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, I do believe Iris was the mother. And then I think the male was another one of the BC males, one of the other British Columbia males.
Excellent. Thank you. I don't know that, Lexi, are there any more questions for Abby or for Rika's life? Otherwise, I'm going to set up my portion here in a second.
Um, well, someone said British Columbia is far from Minnesota. How'd they get in America? For Rika's descendants.
Yeah, that's a good question. So when the Canadian government or the wildlife agencies that were working with that woodland caribou project that had those litters that they found in the wild, when they found those pups, they were trying to find homes for them. Obviously, they didn't have a facility that they could find that just can accept any pups. A lot of facilities are set up to only accept other captive individuals. And so the Wildlife Science Center was unique in that it had worked with other wild-born individuals before, and they happened to have space that they could accept those litters. So that's how they kind of ended up here.
I do have another question I think would be fun for you to answer. What her name means, what Rika means?
Oh yeah, that's a fun one. So when she was a pup, like neonate stage, before we actually gave her an official name, her nickname was Sunday because she was born on a Sunday. Very creative, I know. Um, but we would always call her Sunday Summer Sausage because looked like a little summer sausage, and it just felt right. And then when we were kind of deciding names, we usually kind of open it up to the public to vote on which name they want to choose for that pup. The wolf care team obviously want to have a say in that too because this is, the wolf that we have a connection with and that we're going to know for their entire life. So we come up with a couple of options and then we let the public vote on them. And so Rieka was the winning vote. It means power of the house or power of the home. And then also Power of the Wolf, which we thought was kind of a fitting name for her, knowing that she would be the dominant female. As the only female, it kind of felt right that she would kind of have that position of strength and power within the pack.
That is very fitting. All right, I think the only other question is how is she doing coping with the passing of Axel? I think that transitions well to my part. I'm going to be talking more about general pack updates, wolf care updates. So I'll touch on a little bit on that. I'll share my screen here in a moment. All right, so like Abby was showing us a video of Max with Rieka, and she did mention how it's really helpful, especially for a singleton like Rieka's case, to have dogs to help with that socialization process and for them to learn a little bit more about that canid language and behavior. So another dog that served this function was Enza, and Enza has her birthday as well today. And I just want to give her a shout out. This is one of Krista's, um, our center's director, dogs, and so I figured, that it's a special day for both Enza and Rieka. So thank you so much for your work, Enza. And so if this video is from towards the end of April, you can kind of see it still kind of looks rainy. It still looks like, transition time. The exhibit looks way greener right now. But one thing that we did observe towards the end of April, kind of like that beginning of springtime, a lot of digging. And we happened to have around this day that they were digging really intensely and very much focused on digging this day. Dave Meach happened to be here at the center, and there was an activity at the center, and he talked a little bit about how this could be kind of related to we are for wild wolves kind of in that denning or that close to the whelping season for wolf packs in general. So he was talking about how it could be related to kind of like that seasonal shift, and we were not only seeing that towards the front of the exhibit. We every week we do kind of check the whole exhibit, or at least once a week, and we try to monitor for these spots that they've been digging. And so right around this time of the year, you see that increased frequency and intensity of digging, and it's kind of reflective a little bit of that denning behavior. However, he also said it could just be that they just want to dig and it's just fun. There are potential evolutionary explanations to this, but there's also proximate causes, which is just they feel like digging and we will never know. But it is certainly part of our job to be, checking these holes and making sure, we obviously want to encourage them to have their wolf natural behaviors, and we don't discourage them from doing this, but we still have to make sure that, especially if they're digging close to the fence or if it's if it's becoming into a tunnel and maybe coming too close to the fence, which we haven't had that happen, at least not in the time that I've been here. We certainly want to be monitoring the process of their projects. In the case of this one, um, it's very minimal. They're just getting to some tree roots, and you can see all Blackstone, Kaz, and Rieka spend a lot of time in this little digging project towards the front of the exhibit, while Grayson still kind of hung around. So that was one big thing that I think we see, and we're still seeing that actually. So again, this is a continued effort for us to monitor the digging. So, however, right around this time also, we had a group of volunteers from the community college nearby help us like every year with hay removal. We always have a ton of hay that at least around this time was not frozen, but they help us get it removed as quickly as possible. And then on that same day, we also got a ton of sand delivered. And with this sand, obviously, they're kind of excited about it, investigating it a lot. It's almost like another enrichment for them. And you can see that they're a little bit excited and kind of investigating a lot, because at this point, we're recording when they just got out of holding. They'd been in holding for maybe a couple hours while we were doing that enclosure cleaning. With this sand, if you're wondering what we actually do with it, is yes, we fill some of these holes that they've been working on. But we also, it's really useful for the summer when we want to help them with thermoregulation, and it helps offer some spots for them to lay down, and it's sort of like a cooler spot. So we put some of the sand on top of the pump house, we put some in the dens, and in some other spots that they like to lay, and they kind of like dig a bit of a hole or a depression in there, and it provides that cooler kind of surface for them. If you've been watching our cameras, you might have noticed that our pond is not it's not fully functioning, which is very, very sad. But what we found when we turned on the water key after a couple of days, water was coming out where it wasn't supposed to. I do want to pause it because, yeah, water wasn't coming out of, it's supposed to come out. I don't know if you can see my cursor here, but there's a little bit of a spout that comes out of here, and we wait until it fills to then turn on the pump house. But it turned out that we got a camera through the pipe inside the pump house, an endoscope that luckily our facility supervisor had, and then one of our volunteers helped us with this whole process of, okay, let's see where the crack is, or if there's something major that we need to fix, and it has to be this bigger project. So we found the crack. I'll show you a picture here in a minute, but it has been significant, a significant worry in our minds, because we do want to get the pond going. It is such a good resource for the wolves during the summer when it's hot. Especially Cass and Blackstone really enjoy this pond. And as you can see, you might have, obviously you see Blackstone really enjoys trying to get the water, biting the water. Another reminder of that relationship, or that some of the behaviors that your dog may exhibit, they kind of come from this ancestral trait, right? So here what we're doing is that, or what we've been doing so that they have water, is that we clean up the pond a little bit, we put some water, and then we have to drain it because it gets absolutely, I don't want to say gross, but it does accumulate a lot of, I would say sometimes feces. As you can see, Rieka urinating, she's marking. They also bring a lot of food items like deer hides and just a lot of things, really. You'd be surprised the amount of things that accumulate in there. So here we're draining it, and you can see that this is another opportunity for them to get busy, and they start investigating the pond and find little treasures that maybe they couldn't get to earlier. So you can see where Blackstone was focusing, that's where the drain is. So yeah, we've been trying to so that they have clean water or somewhat clean water to refresh themselves in the warmer days. We've been kind of until we can get this fixed, we've been kind of working with that, but it's kind of a challenge because we have to fill it out using a hose. And what that means is that we have wolves. And even though Blackstone was very respectful of the hose, some other wolves, like Rieka, she sometimes likes to bite the hose. And we've, in the past, kind of lost some hoses to that. So we have to be very strategic and have maybe a couple people kind of guarding the hose, or we kind of take advantage of moments when they are in holding to clean it up and use the hose inside of the enclosure. So again, you see here Blackstone, he probably, oh, and that's the crack. You see Blackstone kind of, he hears and he probably feels that suction from the drain, but very, very small crack. It wasn't as hard to find it, thanks to wonderful volunteers and the facility supervisor. However, the fixing part of it has been very challenging. We are not plumbers. Um, we can use a lot of resources, and part of our team does have some good experience and knowledge, but it is kind of limited. So at least we know where the crack is, and our next steps, and we definitely try to fix it. You'll see here in a minute. This is our wonderful volunteer, Noah, and then our facility supervisor here handing some what we call a shark bite. So they were able to cut where the crack is, and then you kind of put this other piece that replaces that damaged part. But we couldn't get it all the way. So we are now in the process of, so if you are watching cameras on Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, you'll see that wolves will be holding again, and we'll have a plumber that's going to be helping fix that, and hopefully we can get the pond going for the summer. But on other notes, this was recently, we obviously around this time of the year, we replaced hay, and in some of these spots we put wood shavings for the bedding. This is under the eaves, so when it's rainy they really like to rest under the eaves, and we've been seeing them resting together a lot, especially here under the eaves. And it's just another example also of how cohesive this pack is and how good they're doing together. And like Abby was talking, that resting in close proximity really shows how well they get along with each other. It's obvious, you know, that there's wolf behaviors that maybe make us think like differently, but in reality, they are a very cohesive pack, very calm, and there continues to be kind of this recognition, at least from Kaz and Blackstone, of Grayson's leadership role. And Blackstone, somebody asked in the questions if he is considered like officially being the Omega. The status within a pack, and where we're talking about a captive pack, is something that's very dynamic, of course. However, we do see Blackstone, you saw he spends a lot of time with bending branches and sticks, and he gets himself in a lot of these situations. He does a lot of invite chases, and he gets that attention. And sometimes that attention that he gets turns into a little bit of focus sometimes. And here's sorry, Blackstone kind of ran into Grayson, and then Kaz takes again this opportunity to jump at him, and yes, he's grabbing his scruff and he's kind of like shaking. Again, this is normal kind of brother wrestling behavior, and I think just to clarify, some people were asking if that was like aggressive behavior or a sequence of aggression. In that case, not really. In the time that I've been working here, I've seen like one sequence of aggression, and it was something very short, very minimal, and it was between like Axel and Grayson during a winter, you know, when these behaviors, is dominance or testing behaviors, are more heightened. But we do see a lot of this, right? This focus on Blackstone and Cass mounts him, and Rieka then starts circling and focusing on Blackstone. Usually Grayson doesn't engage in the same way that Kaz and Rieka does. He usually kind of stands by and watches. Sometimes he'll do his little kind of grab at him, but in a more social way, not very in such a dominant way. However, this also can turn and happen to Cass. And again, it's a very dynamic, like pack behaviors and interactions are very dynamic. So it can turn real quick into being focused on Blackstone to being focused on Cass. And so that's what was happening there briefly. And you can see it kind of dissipated. And a lot of times you can, maybe if you watch the cameras, you notice that we kind of let things happen. Again, these are very natural wolf behaviors. There are sometimes, like, if it's been going on for a little bit too long, and maybe like it sometimes happens with Blackstone, maybe Blackstone's showing a little bit more of anxiety, hackles up and tuck tail, and just has been going on for too long, we kind of maybe try to distract Rieka if we're in there. She usually is, it's our go-to. It's easy to distract her. Again, within the pack, we continue to see a very close together pack, very cohesive. This is a little bit of a rally after resting for a while. And I know I'm talking, but maybe you can hear a little bit of the vocalizations. A lot of whining lately from Grayson, and it's usually this whining is sort of like calling them over and trying to get the pack together. He's, again, very much taken this role of like, and he's kind of always had that, but it's intensified now that without Axel, there's a little bit of less pressure or less competition between Axel and Grayson. So his confidence and his role within the pack has sort of like increased. And I think I've kind of see him grow to a very strong, confident male. And like Abby was saying, whether Rieka will accept that or not, only time will tell. But certainly Cass and Blackstone seem to accept this. And every now and then you'll see that they'll test their boundaries a little bit, but it's not a frequent thing. Like sometimes I might see Blackstone do a bit of a write-up on Grayson, and Grayson just immediately lets him know that's a no, right? And again, this is just, you can see how submissive Cass continues to be. I think Cass and Blackstone both really, and you can see a little bit of parallel gay between the two, but they really look up, and you can kind of tell that they're really learning from Grayson a lot, and from Rieka as well. But yeah. I can take a quick pause here if there's any questions that I can help answer.
Yes, I do have a couple questions. Let's see. Where'd they go? So someone said, I noticed the line of rocks along the fence. Does that help with like digging with the wolves?
Yeah, one thing that we do along the fence is, let me take a look at time here, is rocks, logs, and that just one thing that Lori kind of found out throughout time is that sort of tries to disencourage the digging, yeah, and just kind of avoid them focusing on those spots if they see something on the other side and start digging. Again, we do have a double fence, and it's underground. It goes down, I believe it's to like 20 feet, if I'm correct. So we have just plenty of barriers that help us with, stopping that process of digging. But yes. That's a good question.
Yeah, we kind of have a couple questions regarding the enclosure, so I figured I'd kind of include them now. But Valerie asked about a hole dug by the wolves towards the back den with a large root. She asked if that was a wolf project.
That is another one of their projects. Um, yes, I've been monitoring that one. It's it's pretty much stuck there. It's not, there is a lot of roots there, and they've kind of hit the bottom and got bored maybe, and they've moved on to the next one. There is one that's towards the back of the enclosure. It's not in the view of any cameras, that we've been kind of monitoring a lot more closely. Just today, Lexi, that's the one I showed you, and you kind of went in, and it goes in a few feet in, um, but it's still pretty short and very much far away from the fence, so we're good there. Those ones, again, we kind of, if we think it's a hazard, because again, wolves run around sometimes this, really quick and not really paying attention. So again, filling some of those holes is important, especially in these open areas. So shortly here, when they give us a chance, we'll try to refill some of these projects, just to make sure nobody kind of does a misstep and hurts themselves.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna ask one more question regarding the enclosure. Kind of seems like any other ones are kind of done after this, but someone asked, is the smaller pond in retirement accessible for them until the main pond is repaired?
That's a good question. Yes, we have ponds in the pack holding area and in the east side retirement. We've had those accessible, like when they're in holding where we're doing projects, they have those accessible and we've filled them up. And then we drain them, make sure it keeps clean. But again, they're not continuously going back there. If, let's say, worst case scenario, um, we can't fix the pond, we'll make sure that we will continue doing this where we fill it up and maybe we drain it and try to keep it clean that way. Hopefully it doesn't come down to that, um but yeah, that's another possibility. If it's a really hot day, we probably will open up these other areas and offer those other ponds. Um, they're smaller, but it's still a good source. Yeah, a good question.
I actually ask one more question that I kind of enjoy. So people were asking about wildfires, and kind of if we've had any this year. But this question says that in the past they saw that they think it was Kaz had to have eye drops because of smoke. And is it hard to give a wolf eye drops?
I think it was Blackstone. If I'm remembering correctly, last year, we did give him eye drops and it was extremely difficult. Yes. It was very difficult to, I mean, if any of the wolves, I think Blackstone might be, yeah, one of the easiest, or Rieka, less avoidant of things going near their faces. Um, but yeah, it was extremely difficult to get them in there properly. But yeah, did that answer the question? It was about, yeah, okay. Okay, any other questions related to this bit?
No.
So another quick update. This is not as exciting because it's not about wolves, but we're still, if you remember our Wolfcare truck, that we got last summer, it's gonna be almost a year that we've had it, and it's been a life changer for us. It means that we can, um, pick up roadkill without maybe breaking our backs, or we also have some hazard lights that we can put up, and we have that lift that we can kind of put the deer and lift it up and it just goes in. But then we also finally got a logo, so if you ever see us driving around town or around the state, just wave. Just so you know, that's our one of our latest updates on our wolf care vehicle. Another thing, I don't know if it came up as a question, but uh, a major question that comes up a lot is about weight and what are the weights of the wolves currently. And I see this conversation a lot in Explore, and I also always see it in the webinar. So I just wanted to clarify that we are able to take weights on, luckily, on Cass, Blackstone, and Rieka every day, Grayson, whenever we can. So it's mostly based on opportunity. But I know some people were kind of surprised on how different the weight of Grayson was compared to previous years. And I do want to clarify and make sure we're going to give the enrichment here pretty quick, that this is kind of like all the data points here. So if you look at the horizontal axis here, this is by year or date, and then the weight in the y-axis, you can see we have a lot of data in 2016 because he was just a pup, and it was easier in that first year to get weights on him. Then as he gets older and maybe a little bit more avoidant of the scale, we got less and less data points. However, you can see it's more or less pretty consistent around the like 85 pounds or so. And he's been kind of bouncing back once he's reached adulthood, between those 80 to 90 pounds. And again, if you look at, let's take just a snapshot. If you look at February of 2018, he kind of does this, goes down a little bit and hits the 82 pounds mark. Then he goes back up. It's kind of like there's seasonal changes to their weight. There's daily changes to their weight. And then just throughout life, as they age, there's weight changes. And so February 2018, 82 pounds, February 2019, 83. But you kind of see that up and down in weight. And we see that also with, I also have Rieka's. I had some time to graph that. Rieka is the same. Right around the beginning of winter, we started seeing her weight going down. And we were a little bit concerned, but then when we look back at previous years, we see that pattern of they go down a bit, and now she's kind of going back up in weight again. So for that reason, this is very useful information to be able to track their weight, and it can tell us some things. However, the most important thing is to use both weight and look at body condition as well. So we obviously want to be in the ideal. This is not, again, this is not a wolf. This is a dog, so it's kind of hard to really follow this properly. And it's not like we can control feeding as in this type of management as much. There's a lot of carcass feeding, and there's a lot of things that we can't really weigh or measure for them. But looking at both body condition and monitoring their weight is what we do. And for now, just so you know, if you're concerned about some weights going down, this is kind of a pattern that we have seen. Now I'm gonna stop right here. If there's more questions, feel free, but I'm gonna go ahead and let Rieka have her birthday enrichments, right? And I'll switch to the camera so that you all can see. I'm gonna wait until maybe they're gonna go into the pack holding area where Abby is placing. She's placed, I don't know if it's there yet, but she'll place the birthday cake in the pack holding area, and they're gonna go in through the gate here. You can see the birthday girl here. So yeah, we'll wait here a second, but I think she's prepared. If you're wondering, because I know this question comes up a lot, the birthday cake, there's no cake. It's mostly meats and different treats that she likes. I think it has some bacon. It has beaver tails, which is one of her favorites. I think it has ham, brats, and that's about what I remember. I don't know if I'm missing anything, Lexi.
I'm not sure. I didn't get to inspect it too close, but It
But
does
Abby
look,
always does wonderful and she's very creative when making these birthday enrichments.
I do actually have some questions too. Once you're ready, just let me know.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just gonna mention it again that there's there's some bacon distractions for the others, and then the birthday enrichment is on top of the den where Rieka was able to get, I guess. All right, so sorry, I can answer some questions.
Yeah, this person asked what brand of camera we use. Now I'm not sure if she meant like in the enclosure or our webcams.
I would
Maybe,
have to dig that information. If it's our cameras that are in the enclosures, I don't know off the top of my head. Um, if it's like our recording or photo camera, um, I believe it's Canon, but I'm not entirely sure on that.
okay. Um, let's see. Someone asked with Grayson's weight on the graph, why did it seem to go down towards the end of it? Um,
Yeah, again, he's around the 80-pound mark. So we're seeing the same pattern right around the springtime. Another thing that I suspect is that now with his leadership role that he's taken over, um, that can bring a little bit more work, a little bit more stress, based on certain studies um, on um, on stress levels comparing the leaders or the parents to maybe the offspring. Usually the ones in charge are the one that are a little bit more stressed. And that could be one thing. Another thing is that he was just diagnosed with colitis. That could be another thing, although I haven't really seen him eating any less. If anything, he's been eating more because he's more confident. He's been more willing to guard, and he's not as intimidated as he was maybe around Axel or Cass. So um, that's what I can say about that. And again, when we did that medical exam in April, he's according to the veterinary that also comes here every week, saying that he's in really good body condition, really good condition overall. So other than his colitis, yeah, he's doing really well.
I've had a couple questions about pups. People just wondering if we're looking to get them soon and just information about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, 2025, so next year, hopefully, um, in the spring, we're looking to add a couple of pups, 2 male pups. Um, so we're in the process of planning and we're in the process of, I think a lot of people always ask, what kind of wolves? Um, a wolf is a wolf is a wolf, but we I think we like to kind of show um the different variations, physical variations and color that wolves have, for example. So we're thinking blackface, but honestly, um, just wolves. And there likely be, yeah, definitely 2 males that will be wanting to add to the pack.
Someone asked how Grayson's doing with his colitis.
Well, that's a great question too. I've been almost on a daily basis looking at his anus to monitor if there's any external inflammation, any external herniated tissue, and I have not seen it's looking very, very good, and I'm really happy with what I'm seeing. I think there was maybe one day where we saw it, and I didn't personally see it, but somebody else see that it's a little bit inflamed, but again, we're not seeing any more of the straining that we were seeing, and that a lot of people that were watching the cameras was seeing him strain for a while. And then we would find the scat, and it had some bloody, or it's not that the scat was bloody, but there was maybe a little bit of mucus that was bloody on top of it, which kind of goes along with his kind of like um his rectum being kind of inflamed or irritated or chronically irritated. But we're not seeing that anymore, so we're really happy. Again, he's getting medication for that once a day, and then a probiotic, and it seems like he's doing really great, and we're really happy with the progress that we're seeing. So yeah.
I had one question saying that for the Explore cams, maybe it would be nice to put that weight chart in the chat just so people can kind of get a view of that on there. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
something to keep in mind.
No,
Another question is,
absolutely.
when's the next webinar? Which I was trying to look that up myself, and
Yeah, the next webinar, and another thing, so two things. Next webinar is on June 20th at 7 p.m. It's the summer solstice webinar, where it's kind of like that seasonal webinar. We talk about those seasonal changes and what we're seeing in our pack. But another thing I forgot to mention is this is obviously our last birthday webinar, and Rieka's is the last birthday. We've been doing a birthday fundraiser since April with Chasm Blackstone, then with Grayson, and now with Rieka. So the fundraiser would close at the end of the month, so you still have some time if you want to participate in that. And you can access that through Facebook or our website, I think YouTube, all of the channels. So again, a lot of wolf care, you kind of know what it means, but it means a lot of maintenance and repairs for the enclosure. It means food, it means medications, and it means staffing, among many other things. So just wanted to, before I forgot about that too.
someone who is a zookeeper was wondering what medication Grayson gets for the colitis.
Mm-hmm. He gets metronidazole for that. Yeah. Yeah, we also have an Amazon wish list. I'm seeing now somebody asking. We have an Amazon wish list as well. So if you prefer to have a little bit more of control of what we're getting and not just donating money, there's also the option to look at our wish list and see the things, the kind of items that maybe we need for building enrichments, um, for just our like our daily work. So things like gloves, you wouldn't imagine, how much we go through, and garbage bags, and there's just a variety of things that we need, and that we use on a daily basis. So yeah, as well. You can find that link. It's somewhere posted in our social media, but also in our website. Okay. It looks like we're pretty much out of time. I'm just gonna maybe finish answering the question, maybe one more if there's anything else, or
Someone did ask about, oh, looks like you're typing the answer right now.
yeah.
Axel's necropsy, yeah.
Yeah, so with Axel, when we received the results of kidney failure and um um I'm blanking. It was discussed as a team, that since we knew kind of like the costs here, we did not conduct a necropsy. We decided to kind of let him go at peace, and not continue digging. But yeah, it was a difficult decision there, and it wasn't by any means like just my decision. It was definitely something discussed with the whole team. So yeah, we did not, yeah, we did not do a necropsy on Axel just because we knew with a lot of the previous wolves that have gone, we did do necropsies because a lot of times we didn't know what happened or what was happening. And it was very useful to have that information in the end. So yeah. Yeah, I think that's all we have, but thank you so much for coming here and watching. And then again, this webinar is recorded, so you can, it'll be posted maybe within a week on YouTube, then you can access it anytime, watch it again if you want to rewatch anything. And yeah, thank you so much for coming and learning more about wolf care, Rieka's birthday, Rieka's life. And yeah, you guys have a wonderful day. Thank you, Lexi, for helping with the questions, and Abby with everything else. She's in there with the wolves. Alrighty,
Thank you,
y'all have a good
everybody.
night.